Hello and welcome to Farmland. Later on today's programme, Agriland beef specialist Breifne O'Brien will be speaking to Rose Goulding, who is beef programme manager with the National Cattle Breeding Centre, about beef genetics being used in the dairy and suckler herds. But first, I'm joined by Belton and Thomas Quin from Midland Agri Consultants in Granard, County Offaly, who are members of the Agricultural Consultants Association, to discuss the latest amendments to Ireland's strategic plan for the Common Agricultural Policy. Paul and Thomas, thank you very much for joining us on Farmland. Let's get started talking about the Common Agricultural Policy and I suppose the revised strategic plan that Ireland has put forward. Thomas, I might go first to you. As a consultant, I suppose you're familiar with all things CAP, and in comparison to the last CAP and this new CAP, I suppose, and the new revised strategic plan, would you say there's significant difference this time round?
I'd say the main differences would be originally in the current CAP we have at the moment, there's a greening element to that, and I suppose the replacement to the current greening element is an eco scheme. At the moment, all let's say beef and dairy farmers are green by definition because they have more than 75% of their area is in grassland, whereas going forward they'll have to take up a list of pick 2 out of 8 actions in their eco scheme, and they'll have to implement those actions on the farm. It's not compulsory for all farmers to do it, but I'd imagine the majority of farmers in Ireland will take some of those actions.
And in the eco scheme, I think they changed it so that one action, if you concentrate specifically on it, can count, or one action that from the list can count as 2 actions.
That's correct, yeah. So I suppose an example of one of those would be maybe a hedgerow planting action, so a tree planting action. It was proposed that for every hectare, every eligible hectare submitted on the BIS application, so what the new BPS will be known as is the BISS. So for every hectare that's submitted on that, there'll be need to be one hedgerow, 1 metre of hedgerow planted, and to count as 2 actions, you can plant 2 metres per eligible hectare. So and you can mix and match as you like. I suppose another action would be extensive livestock production. I suppose the extensive livestock production would be where a farmer has a maximum of 1.4 livestock units per hectare, and then to double that up for the count as 2 actions, he can go at 1.2 livestock units per hectare.
And Paul, do you think that a lot of farmers will go for that particular action now?
For the livestock units,
yeah.
Definitely in the west of Ireland, and a good lot of beef farmers, particularly farmers that be buying in cattle, just say for the 7 or 8 months that it wouldn't be winter, and it'll be over a 12-month period that these is done by. So when people buy cattle for 7 or 8 months, a lot of them it's unlikely that they're going to exceed them livestock units. There will be some farmers very sceptical. I don't know if people went into the beam scheme. It was the thing that opened up for winter finishers a few years ago, and they had a lot of people, our farmers in particular, had to end up paying back the money. So if you exceeded you had to reduce your stocking rate by 5%, and some people didn't reduce it and ended up paying back. So I can see the GPS fertiliser spreader probably will be a very popular option, especially with the price of fertiliser. As well as that, there is grant aid available for farmers, 40% for ordinary farmers, and for young trained farmers they're available at 60%. So I can see that being a very popular option, and it's very good practice too.
It is good practice, but it is a jump from what it originally had been. I think was it 60% now gone up to 100%. What about the cohort of farmers that maybe don't have the most modern equipment, the most modern machinery? They'll probably have to get contractors in to do it then, and they're facing a lot of expenses this year as it is. Will it be tough on them? It
is going to be tough on them, but I suppose 60% wasn't that bad. A lot of farmers were saying, look, I'll spread my first cut, I'll get the contractor in to spread that. Now they have to look about spreading 100% of it. I suppose in our area there's a lot of the local co-ops does supply and spread for a lot of the farmers, and they have the GPS systems and all available, but I again, I suppose farmers are looking at the price of it, and if it's costing maybe 30, 40 euros a tonne to spread the fertiliser, they possibly could be saving it with the amount of overlapping and different things it's done without the GPS is a great system. It is a pity, but I suppose that the 60% didn't stay, because it was going to attract a lot of farmers. We did notice that. We were on the AETS courses, and I knew from the feedback we were getting that the GPS spreader was going to be almost, with a lot of farmers, was going to go for that one, both intensive and extensive.
What about biodiversity, Thomas? In terms of, I suppose, different kind of land like scrub or woodland copse and things like that in this latest revision of the strategic plan.
Well, I suppose the big thing there would be the proposed 50% of
the land parcel.
The land parcel being made eligible, even though there's, let's say, 50% scrub on that parcel. So I suppose there will be some farmers that will have certain parcels that will qualify for that, and it would be quite beneficial to those farmers.
Previously, correct me now if I'm wrong, I think for having land like that or percentage of land, they were kind of penalised for that. So is it a bit confusing for them now?
I suppose the goalpost has changed totally.
Yeah.
So I suppose if we look at it, let's say at the 31st of December this year in 2022, a farmer was basically being almost penalised for having that scrub on his land. Then we go 1st of January 2023, he's getting paid for it. So I suppose it is somewhat contradictory, but that's the system at the moment.
And in terms of the acre scheme then, for example, which is a scheme I suppose recently just announced the payment rates, but the Minister announced them as well, and I'm sure all advisors and consultants are trying to get up to speed on the payment rates. The difference to this and other schemes in the past, Paul, is I suppose that this is extremely results orientated, whereas obviously there was results sought in the past, but this time there's going to be scorecards.
Yeah.
And do you think that will be a bit of a deterrent, or do you think farmers will be able to get on board?
It will be a bit of a deterrent to some farmers, because one of them is the low input grassland, and the farmers have to have these species to claim this. For a while they can get paid at a lower rate, but I suppose farmers need to know more about this actual scheme. That's the biggest thing, and then they need to be made familiar of these species. And I suppose it's some farmers, we've been lucky enough, we put a lot of farmers into the REAP scheme, and they've got a taste for it, and a lot of them species is there, particularly in older type pastures that hasn't received any spraying or slurry. A lot of them species are there, but there is another option available under the extensive grazing, and I think farmers are going to feel hard done by this. It's very similar to the low input pasture. Permanent pasture was on there, it lost the last time round, and the payment rate for it was €314 a hectare, and the same sort of action this time is €200 a hectare, right? And if there's a watercourse in that parcel, that has to be managed, and I don't think bovines can drink from it. So just say the last time the farmer had that parcel, for example, he had 5 hectares of low input pasture, he could get a payment of over €1,500, and if there was a watercourse on it, he could get a further payment of €1.50 a metre to fence off that watercourse. Where now that payment will be €1,000 potentially for what could have been 2,500 the last time round.
Yeah.
That's one. I think I was quite disappointed with that, because for farmers to close off the watercourses and maybe look about investing in solar panel drinkers and different, there's a lot of money to be invested, and that's a relatively low payment for it.
In terms of then, I suppose, the nitrates derogation, that's obviously, we got an extension last March. There aren't a very many number of countries in Europe who get this derogation, and the Netherlands still hasn't agreed on theirs. But in terms of Ireland's derogation, what we're being told by the department is that this is the best that we could get now, because we may not have got any at all. But it is, we'll say, going from 250 down to 220 in terms of nitrogen, and that will have a significant impact on a large number of farmers. And are farmers prepared for this now, or what's the feedback that you're getting?
I suppose a lot of farmers that are in derogations have spent a huge amount of money on, let's say, farm infrastructure, buildings, expansion of herds, especially in the dairy scenario. And I suppose they are somewhat disillusioned, but I suppose that they'll have to find alternatives. Be that, I suppose the big thing is the different banding of the cows, and what way that each individual farm finds their band, and that'll determine their nitrates for the year. I suppose some may have to go look at more contract rearing, others may need to look at, let's say, renting land, and obviously others may need to reduce stock numbers. But it'll have to be done on a case by case basis. But I suppose there are a lot of farmers who are dependent on that nitrates derogation.
I mean, in Cork alone, I think last year there was over 2,000 who applied for derogation, and when you think about, they haven't come up with the actual areas yet. The EPA is currently doing their assessment of areas of significant water pollution, and I think maybe next summer that they're going to come up with their final report, and then the department has to go back to the Commission in September, and nitrates derogation rules come in January. There's a 4-month period there where a lot of farmers who maybe have expanded will start having to, cut their herd or take other action to try and reduce it quite quickly.
I suppose that probably will be the reality. They'll either have to cut herds, I suppose there'll have to be either that, or there'll have to be a huge amount of work done on reducing pollution. And I suppose, if there is a correlation between dairy expansion and reduced status in some water courses in certain parts of the country. So I suppose it lies with the EU Commission at the moment.
In terms of what's coming through to you at the moment, Paul, what are the main, I suppose, queries that farmers have to you? What are the main schemes they're worried about? I suppose the focal point for information at the minute.
There's massive interest in the organic scheme at the moment.
Okay.
There's a lot of farmers. We see there was seen about these big payment rates is coming, but I suppose I have to just wait and see what the specifications comes out of it. But I can see a lot of beef farmers. Like a few years ago, I think we had 4. I think in the last couple of weeks we could have 150, 200 farmers looked about this organic schemes, about joining it up. I suppose the more what they'll try their best to do, if they can maximise their acres payment and their organic payment, it's something they'll definitely look about. To do that, they'll probably have to try and pick as many linear actions as possible on your acres. So I think you can plant up to 750 metres of a hedgerow, which will give you about 4,000 a year, and maybe coppicing of hedgerows. I think that's about in or around €1,000 on top. And if they can get their 300 a hectare for the first 2 years with their participation payment of 2,000, I know it'll reduce to 250, and your participation payment will reduce in year 3 and 4 and 5. But I can definitely, genuinely see a lot of interest. I think you will see a lot of farmers transferring across.
Another issue would be the price of chemical fertiliser at the moment too, is something that's making some farmers turn to organics because they can't afford the current price of fertiliser.
That's another thing, I suppose. Every farmer is trying to do what they can now to meet emissions targets. Agriculture has to reduce emissions by 25%. So that'll be done through various actions in CAP and through the various schemes and so on. I might ask you both, I suppose, finally, what the advice would be to farmers who are coming to you now, that have either an average or greater than average size dairy, or are in beef or in suckler. I suppose, I know, Thomas, you said it's a case-by-case basis and you'd have to look at each farm enterprise individually, but is there advice that you could give generally to farmers now who are a bit worried, who haven't gone into the details or haven't maybe sat down with their consultant yet, and hearing these figures come out in the news about 25% and, payment rates for the acre scheme and so on? Like, what would the advice be?
I suppose the whole, I suppose the 25% reduction in emissions has only been announced in recent weeks. So I suppose the big thing there is, I wouldn't just get very bogged down on that at the moment. I suppose first of all would be work on how that farmer can maximise his acres payment and how that suits that farm. Obviously, in like that, no matter what intensity the farmer is, whether he's an extensive farmer or an intensive farm, he needs to explore all his options. And I suppose, obviously from an acre's point of view, the scheme is there at the moment, and I suppose it's down to individual farmers to maximise it. But I suppose as regards to emissions targets, I suppose we'll have to, I suppose, watch this space, and it will have to be in the back of all farmers' minds how they're going to be able to mitigate against that.
And Paul, what advice would you give to your clients now? I suppose the farmers coming in who are worried and they feel, they're being asked more and more and getting less and less.
Well, you definitely consult with your advisor and go through the different options that will be available to you, and try to see what suits your own system best. But I suppose there's no point panicking that much, and we just have to wait and see, is this definitely going to be approved by the EU, because it still hasn't been approved yet. Finally,
are advisors up to date as much as possible? Are the consultants getting the information they need, would you say, Paul?
Say we are, but there's an awful lot of information this year, because you've got all these different schemes. There's a lot of stuff to pick up on very quickly, and the deadline is going to be very tight. It's just that consultants, I can see them being under an awful lot of pressure come the back end of the year to try, and if you have all this interest in the organic scheme plus the acre scheme, there's a few other small schemes going on in the background as well, plus you're getting into the end of the starting looking at nitrates for farmers, different things. There's a lot of work on, but it just hopefully we get through it. In fairness, we've been under pressure before, and the department has given extensions and different things, but it's just a matter of trying to get everyone in and get out, and hopefully get the farmers into a scheme that suits their system the best.
And hopefully the farmers won't come to the advisors or consultants at the last minute either and try and get it done as best you can.
I think we've done the EETS training the last couple of months. We've trained a significant amount of farmers, and I suppose we were able to give the farmers a good view of what's coming down the line, as well as raising a bit of awareness about biodiversity and health and safety. We've got very positive feedback from them, and that's been a major help for us, because in particular the farmer was getting paid and the advisors got paid to run them, so there was great incentive with the department that we've maximised, and we've got a lot of uptake on it, and I think that's been a big help this year, especially for what's coming down the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thomas Quin, Paul Belton, thank you very much for joining us on Farmland today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're joined here in studio by Rose Goulding, Beef Programme Manager at the National Cattle Breeding Centre. Rose, what is the National Cattle Breeding Centre and what does it do?
The National Cattle Breeding Centre, NCBC for short, we're an AI company, and we have two shareholders. We're owned by Munster Bovine and Progressive Genetics. And NCBC runs the breeding programmes for Munster Bovine and Progressive Genetics. We house the bulls and we do the semen production. So our two big focuses are the beef and dairy breeding programme and also semen production.
What trends are being seen in beef AI usage in, I suppose, both the dairy herd and the beef herd?
Okay, so I'll start with the dairy herd, and a couple of things are happening now in the dairy herd. First of all, the dairy cow numbers is plateauing. Okay, and we've come from a number of years of growth. So we're at a stage now where the dairy herd is plateauing. And also there's an increase in usage of sex semen. So sex semen is increasing, it's doubling actually year on year. And this year we saw over 25% increase in usage on beef sires. And traditionally dairy farmers would have put dairy sires on their cows at the start of the season and the beef at the end. And now, because there's lesser demand for replacements and the availability of sex semen, dairy herd owners are very, very specific on selecting their dairy cows that they want their replacements from, and beef goes on everything else. So beef is now being used from the very, very start of the season. And also herd owners are looking at the beef value and the carcass weight of these beef sires, because they want to have better quality calves available for sale. And that's real positive for the calf rearers and finishers, because they will have better quality calves available and they will be available from the start of the season.
So in the suckler herd then, what trends are we seeing in AI usage?
The suckler herd is a completely different profile because most suckler farmers are part-time. So they're a profile of people that they love their farming, but they also have another job. So most of the work they do is between 5 and 9 o'clock in the evening. Okay, so the genetics then really feeds into that. Okay, so these are people that want very good quality cattle, but they need cows that will do the work. So the cows will have to calve themselves. The cows will have to have a lot of milk to rear the calves, and be really, I will say, easy care cattle. And we're really seeing that now in the suckler herd. So we see an increase in polled genetics, for example, that will eliminate dehorning. So we've a number of polled limousine bulls available now, and also a couple of polled Charolais bulls. We are seeing an increase in those from an ease of management point of view. We're also seeing our high index bulls being used for producing replacements. Because these guys, they really want bulls that'll produce cows for them, so we call them our cow maker bulls. So there's always great demand on these bulls that have milk, good fertility, good temperament, that will calve on their own, that will calve a good quality calf. And then also, because these people are really passionate about the quality of their cattle, they also want really good quality cattle. So from a terminal point of view then, once they've replacements, once they've bred their cows to produce enough replacements, they'll put terminal bulls in all the other cows. So, but they want to manage the calving difficulty. So they do not want trouble calving, but they still want good quality. And that's really the trend we're seeing. So keeping up the carcass weight, keeping up the carcass conformation, but avoiding the difficult calving.
What research is NCBC currently undertaking?
Yeah, we're not a research organisation, and we're really lucky in Ireland, you know, to have Teagasc, and we really rely on the research, the really good research that's been done by Teagasc. Our focus in NCBC is the breeding programmes, and just to speak specifically about the beef breeding programme, our focus is to continually make genetic gain year on year, so that the customers of Munster Bovine and Progressive Genetics have better quality bulls every year coming on board. So the bulls next year are better than the bulls now. And just for example, if you look at the bulls, the bulls we have available, the beef bulls we have available to dairy farmers, and just take the Angus panel as an example. Our average, the bulls we've available for dairy maidens, they are 25% above the breed average on carcass weight. The bulls we have available for dairy cows are twice the breed average in carcass weight, and we're retaining the calving ease. And then if you look at our test sires, the bulls that went out this year as test sires, they're nearly 3 times breed average in carcass weight. So, and that's really our goal in NCBC, is to make genetic gain that ultimately will feed into the profitability of the herd owners, who are the customers of our shareholders, Munster Bovine and Progressive Genetics. And that genetic gain we want to do across our entire breeding programmes. So if we're talking about beef, we're talking about the beef and dairy. If you're talking about beef on suckler, we have a replacement programme, we have a terminal programme. And then obviously in the dairy breeding programme, that's solely focused on dairy semen for dairy herd owners, but the focus there is also to make genetic gain year on year. And that feeds directly into profitability for the herd owners.
The recently announced emission reduction targets, what will they mean for beef breeding in Ireland?
Good question. A good question. One thing they will mean is that we've made a commitment to reduce them, okay? And from a breeding point of view, there's an awful lot we can do to reduce emissions. And we're very lucky, actually, that anything we can do to reduce emissions also feeds into greater profitability. So, for example, if we're talking about in the suckler herd, more females calving at 2, decreased age at slaughter. So if we can try and slaughter our animals younger, a calf out of a cow every year. And then very, very good weaning weight. So that cow having a lot of milk to wean a heavy calf, therefore less inputs. So all of those things also means more money to the bottom line, because it's all about efficiencies. So we need to be more efficient on our female side from a fertility point of view. And that feeds into our calving as well, because if a cow has an easy time calving, she'll be more likely to go back and calf. We need cows with a lot of milk, and then a calf out of a cow every year, and calving it too. So just all those things that feed into efficiencies. Also then, with the work that's been done with Teagasc and ICBF on methane emissions, the work being done in Tully will be really, really critical. And we're working very closely in our breeding programme as well with these traits. What's being measured in Tully is feed efficiency and methane emissions. So in the NCBC breeding programme, we're focusing a lot now on cattle that will have a higher feed efficiency, which ultimately will make them more sustainable. And also trying to find genetics that can do the same thing with less methane production. So that's really the focus on, from a suckler point of view, from the point of view of reducing the greenhouse gases. On the dairy beef side, it's roughly the same. We're looking for bulls with very good feed efficiency, an early age at slaughter.
And then, is there much more scope to improve the genetic merit of these beef calves that are coming from the dairy herd, Rose?
Oh, there is. There's massive scope, and we've two sides to it. We have the dairy cow, and we have the beef bull. So just starting on the beef bull, with our promotional material through Progressive Genetics and Munster Bovine over the last couple of years, our advice has always been to divide out your dairy cows, or your dairy females, into maiden heifers, second calvers, and mature cows. And the important thing is to use the appropriate beef bull depending on the parity of the cow. So you can use much higher quality bulls on your second calvers and higher again on your mature cows than you can use in your maiden heifers. And traditionally, the maiden heifer bull was almost used across the board. So that's a great area for growth if we can just try and use the bull depending on the parity of the cow. And it still means minimum calving difficulty from a herd owner's point of view. The difference is the mature cow has greater calving ability, so he can use a higher calving bull. And our programme is very, very much focused on that. Okay, so that's one way we can really, really improve the quality. The other way we can improve the quality is to always use the index, use the information we have. So we're lucky in Ireland now, we have a dairy beef index, which is broken into two parts. There's the calving ease, and then there's the beef sub-index. So using the higher beef sub-index bulls will greatly improve the quality of the calves. So that's on our beef side. On our dairy cow side then, we need to make sure that we get a good balance between the maintenance of the cow and the beef sub-index of the cow, so that we have that sweet spot, I call it, where we're maximising dairy profitability, but we also have cows that are suitable of producing a beef calf that can be taken through to slaughter sustainably.
How can dairy farmers be encouraged to further improve the quality of calves that are being produced on dairy farms every year?
I would say dairy farmers at the moment are in a good place. Just judging by the usage of our bulls for the last couple of years, year on year, the higher carcass bulls are being used. But to really encourage dairy farmers to use higher quality bulls, I suppose there's a couple of things. The first thing is to put dairy sires on the maiden heifers. You know, that's the first thing, because that's the right thing to do from a dairy profitability point of view anyway. And automatically we're improving the quality of the beef calves because there'll be more of them coming from second calvers and mature cows. But I suppose the real big carrot will be the commercial index that ICBF have launched, but it's not available yet. And that will be the real benefit for the dairy herd owner that is doing the right thing, that has the correct cow type and that is using his high carcass bulls. The resultant calves will have higher commercial beef index and ultimately will be worth more when that's available to the calf buyers. Because at the moment, calf buyers do not have that information to them. So it's difficult for them to really value the calf. So calf buyers need to know that commercial beef value of the calf, and then dairy herd owners will be rewarded for producing the better quality calf.
And then I suppose, Rose, just in your own opinion, over the next 10 years, what changes could we expect to see in the composition of the overall beef herd in Ireland? So the dairy calves destined for beef, will there be less Frisian bulls on stream? What do you think we will see?
Okay, so the dairy herd is plateauing. The suckler herd is reducing slightly. Okay, so over the next 10 years, we're likely to see a greater use in sex semen. So we'll see a reduction in that Frisian bull calf. With the greater use of sex semen, then there's a greater opportunity to use better quality beef bulls on dairy cows from the very start of the season. So there will be higher quality beef calves from the dairy herd. Also, in the suckler herd, it's likely to continue to reduce slightly, I would say, because suckler farmers at the moment, many suckler farmers are suckling because they like it. They're passionate about their beef farming. They want to pass that love and joy of farming onto their children. So there's a lot of social reasons attached to farming as well, and I think that will stay in Ireland because as a nation, we love our cattle, we love our farming, and I expect that will continue as it has done, coming down from one generation to the next. And also, if you look at our family farm structure, people tend to like to keep, that family farm. If they got it from their parents, they respect that, and they enjoy to continue farming on the family farm. So I expect that to continue as well.
Rose, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all from Farmland for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to stay up to date with all the latest agricultural news on agriland.ie and check in with us on social media at the following links.